Good evening and welcome. Avid Learning is a public programming platform by the SR Group. Our constant endeavor is to bring you the best of Indian and international programs in art, literature, and innovation through workshops, masterclasses, and discussions. This evening was curated by Avid Learning. Human Power, Arts for Social Change. The arts have the potential to transcend boundaries and time, relating to diverse groups of people. Artists have always voiced their opinion in order to make a difference in the world. Our speakers have been inspired by this notion. World-renowned dancer and Padma Shri awardee Astad Deboo is a philanthropist on a mission to showcase the talent of young hearing-impaired and street children through dance, becoming a catalyst for a brighter future. Photographer Paolo Regis' blurred images, seen in this exhibition, signifies that no matter how individual we all may be, we still move as one. Good Earth and Avid Learning are proud to host Astad and Paolo as they discuss the humanitarian efforts and the power of the arts to inspire social change. In conversation with professor and dancer Jeroo Mulla. Before we begin, a few words about our speakers. Astad Deboo's name is synonymous with contemporary Indian dance, a style that he pioneered at a time when innovations in Indian dance were not welcome. His dance training in Kathak and his studies in the US, UK, Germany, Japan, and Indonesia has resulted in a technique which is very much his own. He has performed with Pink Floyd, has been commissioned by Pierre Cardin, and has worked with Bollywood directors such as Mani Ratnam and Vishal Bhardwaj, and the legendary painter M.F. Hussain. He was bestowed by Sangeet Natak Academy and the Padma Shri by the Government of India. For 27 years, he has mentored the hearing-impaired students and the street children of the Salam Balak Trust. Paolo Regis has worked with the biggest brands and publications in European fashion. His work has been published by noted international fashion magazines such as Vogue Italia, Maxim, Anglomania, and All Access magazine. His continuous interest in the potential of photography as a medium for artistic expression inspired him to work in fashion photography as well as portrait and landscape. He explores many aspects of modern society and is currently the official Italian photographer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Jeroo Mulla, professor, has been the head of the Department of Social Communications Media at the Sophia Polytechnic and has been teaching photography and film appreciation for over 30 years. She has served as a jury member for the 57th National Film Awards and is currently on the advisory board of Women in Film and Television. She was appointed to the Film Censor Board as an advisory panel member in 1987. Jeroo was honored in 2007 with a fellowship and a gold medal by the Association of Business Communications in India in recognition of her long and distinguished career in communication practice. The only woman to be so honored from India. I'll hand it over to her.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. It's a great pleasure here to have two wonderful people who, through their art, are trying to transform and make a change and make a difference. Astad, I have known for many, many years. I have been witness to his struggle just to make a platform for himself, and then to see how once he has reached a certain level to share this wonderful experience of his with others and transform their lives. Paolo, I have just met, but his work is fascinating, and there's a little connect because I also do Buddhist meditation practice, Vipassana, and Paolo is a great follower of the Dalai Lama and has been influenced by his teachings, and he brings that to bear in the work that he does with the photographs that he has taken. And so we're going to now just look first at some of the works that these great artists have produced, and that'll give you an idea of what they do, and then we will get into a conversation with them. And we're going to begin with a clip from Astad's work, and then we'll start the discussion.
लोग बहुत खुशनसीब हैं और बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिला है। डिसिप्लिन, काम करने का तरीका, कोरियोग्राफी का तरीका, कैसे वर्क करते हैं, लोगों को स्टेज पे कैसे मतलब अपने डांस की तरफ कैसे अट्रैक्ट करते हैं। तो ये सारी चीज़ें हैं जो मुझे सीखने को मिला है और मैं फाइनली ये कहना चाहूँगा कि मैं ज़रूर इस चीज़ को आगे बढ़ाऊँगा आस्ताद सर के साथ और मैं अपने स्टूडेंट के साथ।
I love to do dance and I'm very grateful to Astad sir who giving me chance to dance with him, and I'm doing dance with Astad sir last 2 years ago and I'm very excited to dance. I'm going to perform today in Pondicherry.
Astad ji, and day by day I learn. Then now I understand that there are some different kind of dances. I learned a lot with this group, and my experience is amazing so far. And I wish to continue to learn more and more and more.
When I do decide to work with a group of people, whether it's the deaf or whether it was the performance of the Salam Balak Trust, I just left it as an open audition, and those who wanted to come came. But yes, when they start learning, then they are in for a very, very concentrated period of learning, and I'm not an easy teacher, so they know that I have certain demands which they have to cope with, and they have brilliantly. As I say, one of the reasons I'm so proud of all my performers, that if you were to see from what they came and what they are today, and also they also become role models in their own community. And again, I always say we have to strive to excel. I do not want the audience to say, oh, you were deaf, or oh, they are from the street. And I said, that's no excuse. And besides them, I've also been working with other performing traditions of our country. Like I'm working up in Manipur for the last 15 years, and I've worked with the martial art practice of Thangta. And presently my work is with the drummers, the Pungchalam drummers of Manipur. And then I've also worked with puppet masters. I've collaborated with musicians, actors. So the range is very, very varied. And right now, as of the last 6 months, I choreographed and worked with a Swiss choreographer, and we've opened a work which we opened in Switzerland, and we'll be touring later this summer, and hopefully we might be coming to India at the end of the year.
So I think you got an idea. I remember when I was invited to see the Street Children performance, I was quite stunned, because I never expected that level. It was just so brilliant and so professional. And as Astad said, that it wasn't someone saying, oh, it's street children, so, have that kind of, very patronizing attitude. You really felt that it was an amazing performance. Astad, can you now share with us all the difficulties that you faced when you were trying to work with these street children?
Well, difficulties have been synonymous in my journey, and I won't say there was any particular difficulty working with them. In fact, the trustees of Salam Balak Trust were after me for many, many years saying, why don't you come and work with us? And everybody wants, a free ride. And I said, sure, but you don't have the money. And until I get a grant, and this particular project really fell into my lap because I will not mention my sponsor who had been supporting my work with the deaf previously, and then I went with another project, and they said, oh, we're not into deaf anymore, we're into street children. So these were their very words. So I said, okay, fine. So I told the trustees, you better send a letter, and I'll present it to the corporate sponsor, and that's how the work was initiated. Now, when corporates do give, grants, it's like they also hold a gun to your head and they say, well, we'd like to see some results. So the grant was sanctioned a year, but the funds only came 6 months later. And so I said, okay, if we are going to show something, and within 6 months, I really got to show something which is going to be worthy. And so I won't say difficulty. In those 6 months, when these young kids who came, they got all very excited because of the fact that they had seen me previously with other performances, and they were also, some of them like the three gentlemen who you saw, Avinash, Shamshul and Pankaj, were always saying, "Aap hamare saath kaam nahi karte." So when they heard that I was coming, and came in, and a whole bunch of other people, I had no audition. I said, okay, come. And in the first 4 weeks, it was sort of for me to sort of have an idea who can do what and who can't. And there were 3 kids who were really 2 left feet, but I didn't want to put them out because they were really trying, and that spirit of wanting and grabbing the opportunity, that's what really sort of endeared me. And
you told me that they were all into the Bollywood culture,
right,
and to get them into something that was so serious. Yeah, can you talk about that?
So originally they were only doing Bollywood dance before I came in. And one of the things they also said, okay, whenever we did a Bollywood show, after the performance nobody really came. But when they started working with me, and again it was a whole different platform that their work was being seen compared to when they were invited, many a times I feel sorry also that these people come to look at the NGOs, and then these kids are supposed to put a show on for them. So that way these people also know what the activities of the NGO is. So they were asked to do Bollywood dance, and then that's it. Whereas when they saw the kind of work they were doing, even at times during my absence when funders came and they were put on show by the trust, they said people came and talked to them. And that made them feel good about that people were taking an interest. So the difficulty was just trying to get them to be synchronized and to come up to the level of the first round, which we did within the 6 months period that I was given.
Yeah. So in the same light, I think you are also doing wonderful work. I think you've been, you told me that you were using the money that you got from the sale of these wonderful photographs to put it into a project called the Alice Project. Yes. So in the same way that he is working with street children, you in your own way are working or trying to help, underprivileged children to look at education differently. So maybe we can have a clip and then we can speak to Paolo.
The Project is an NGO that has been formally authorized by the Indian government and was registered in Varanasi in September 1994. Its purpose is to develop an integrated education program through experience and research. Today, these schools offer accredited education to 1,050 students who learn according to Alice Project methodology from kindergarten to university. Alice Project methodology is based on a revolutionary idea. Teach students how to know and control their minds, and they will know how to control the environment. Why is it called the Alice Project? Alice in Wonderland is a well-known story written by Lewis Carroll. The young girl went inside her subconscious mind guided by a white rabbit. Like the young Alice of the story, the students at Alice schools are every day invited to explore their wonderful inner world, using their imagination, their thoughts and their emotions. The white rabbit was chosen as the school mascot. It represents the wise guru who guides the students towards the path of truth and love. Then, like the Alice of the story, they come back to reality, to the classroom, and they embark on a different tour through their books of history, mathematics, science, languages, and so on. In this way, the students obtain the knowledge they need to pass their exams with flying colours and find a suitable job. But they also amass the wisdom they need to become happy, generous human beings.
So this is a project that, Paolo, you're supporting. Can you tell us the journey, because you're a commercial photographer, and then how did you then get influenced by the Dalai Lama and Buddhist teachings and finally reach the stage?
This stage, yeah, well, I'm a fashion photographer, and I've been working in a few different places in the world, and that was my work. Okay. Then after that, I wasn't happy about only taking photographs of, like, I don't know, in a commercial way. So I started to take photos of like events where like people, they were like smiling, where they were like sharing emotion basically, and through that I start to experiment, and I try to materialize what it was the energy coming out from like a group of 1,000 people. So
is it audible? Is it audible? Mic.
Is it good?
Think you could just use a hand mic.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. This off? Yeah. Okay. Hello? Okay. Sorry. So through that I start to work when I...
Hold it like that, no? Because it's not connected.
Okay.
This.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Like 15 years ago, I started to take photographs in a club, in a party, where like people, they were like sharing emotion. And I see that it was something like magical about those moments, which was like the energy. It was like coming from like a group of people all together. And then I've been photographing like a stadium in Africa during the African Cup Nation, and still there it was like some energy coming out from those places. Then I went to Varanasi, and it was impressive to see like the deaf side, and seeing so many people around that, and so silence, but still were like a lot of energy going. And with my project, with my kind of way to express, I think I materialize the way to show the energy of a group of people being together. For example, now we are all here, and there is some energy going on. And I think it's the result of like him plus her plus him plus him. You know, we're all like so single but so important in one unique way of seeing. I think if just one person of us goes away, everything changes. You know? So through that, I found out that that was like the way to materialize this kind of view, and it was very important. And I thought that somebody was calling this project art. No? It was this big word, but I didn't really want to produce art. For me, it was just producing one emotion. And this emotion, I thought that it was like something that I want to use for and also other people less fortunate than us, no? And through the teaching of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, I met this wonderful person which is called Valentino Giacomin, and he's based in Sarnath and Varanasi from probably 20-25 years. And he's the one, he created a project, it's called Alice Project. Alice Project basically is looking for like those orphan people coming from the south of Bangladesh, and they coming from this ethnic group, it's called Chakma. Very interesting things, because Chakma, it was Buddha Shakyamuni, it was a part of the Chakma tradition. Yeah, it's a technical group because it was Chakma. So Valentino is taking care of like 1,000 orphan kids, Chakma. And in this school, it's so unbelievable, because those kids basically they live together, like, and they train them how to meditate since they're 5 years old, going to 10 years old. And the result of this meditation, it really like not shocked me, but I don't know. I met these kids. He was 10 years old, and he took my hands and he bring me around in the school. You know? And he was showing me, and he was talking like very, very well. It was like his mind was so sharp and very strong in the same way. So, you know, it was like something very important to tell to all my friends or to tell to the world. So that's why I started to organize events in the last 10 years. And put in photograph of those kids and raise money on those events. No? I was doing some.
Yes, you were telling me that you actually organize events so that you raise money and then that money, send that money there.
And it's something beautiful, because also the person they come in through the event, they enjoy, because everybody, I don't know, like few friends of mine are DJ, they DJing for free. We cover only the expense, no? And what is extra, we just send it to them. And basically is a party with all the photographs of those kids around, and everybody, they just enjoy because, you know, they're doing something nice.
Nice,
no?
yes.
It's not me.
That's right, it's something for someone else. But even the Alice project, the concept was so interesting, because just the same way that Alice follows the rabbit and goes deep down into the subconscious when she meditates, I love the name Alice Project, because Alice in Wonderland goes down and meditates, so she's going down the hole and she's going into herself. So there, the concept of that school where the kids, as he says, are, you know, such wonderful people, the meditation brings them to a certain level of concentration. And the Chakma is very interesting because they're dispossessed from everything, you know, they belong to no state, they're dispossessed from everywhere. So it's wonderful that this kind of school exists. Astad, can I now come back to you and ask you to tell me something about your experience with, because the Chakma also in that similar region, you've also worked in a very interesting way with the Manipuri artists. The Manipuri artists, we know what's happening in the Northeast. Even when I use the word, I'm a little worried because everyone says Northeast is just clubbed together. But in Manipur, there's so much of turbulence, there is so many problems. And there again, Astad has made inroads, and he has done the most beautiful dances where he uses a wonderful spiritual kind of a feeling, and that gets infused. There's the traditional and the modern and the combination of the two. And I know you must have had grave problems working in an area like Manipur and trying to introduce dance there. Could you share some of that experience with us?
Well, my journey with Manipur and my sort of continued relationship has been for the last 16 years now. Growing up as a young performer, one had been exposed to various styles of dance, and Manipur especially. I had seen the martial art practitioners, the Thangta practitioners, in a demonstration. And again, it's in one of those sort of moments of being there at the right time, the right place. I recall that when cable television was just coming in and ZTV was one of the first of the channels, and they were going to have their first award ceremony, and the show producer said, Astad, what can we do something which is quite unique? So I said, and funding was not an issue. So I said, you know, I'd really like to see if we can incorporate the martial artists. So I went around, and the gurus there are, you know, are very, very protective of their students, of their art, and rightly so. But fortunately for me, my name had preceded my arrival, and they knew that whatever I did was with sincerity, and I wasn't going to make something of a sort of a show. So we started off, I sort of explained to Guru Deva Bratasena, and he seemed to like what I sort of explained to him, and that's how the journey began. And for that particular show, on one hand I had all these 12 martial artists, and on the other hand I had these 12 young dancers of Bombay who I had auditioned, and I became the sort of like the spirit, and these were two opposite sides coming to war. So that thing was choreographed, it went off very well, and that sort of started a seed of looking at doing a long work with the martial artists, and again I had Guruji's blessings. Now working in Manipur, you know, the way the political situation is, and though I was welcomed with open arms, there were people always a bit skeptical to say, like, is somebody like from the city coming, and is he going to really dilute the work? But whenever I work with a performing discipline, and primarily I have been concentrating primarily in Manipur, I've made sure that their technique, their spirituality is kept intact. And through the years, with my own work that I have evolved as a dancer, as a creator, I've become very internalized, very minimal, and to the fact that having been trained in the Indian classical dance techniques of Kathak and Kathakali, the rasas have always played a very, very important influence in my own creativity. Even the fact that when I'm doing something abstract, but there is a sort of a rasa which goes along with it, which really adds another dimension and brings that, even that abstractness into a meaning, into coming into my world of whatever I'm trying to portray in that particular piece of creativity. So, so that's how, so that was one thing. The second thing, when I would arrive, I'd never know that it's going to be a band. We had perennial problems of power cuts, and even today, when I go, and now I've been working with the Pungchalam drummers, another sort of very, very sort of powerful performing practice of Manipur. And what differentiates Thangta, the martial art practice, to the Pungchalam and Sankirtan, that these are drummers which even today perform and sing in the temples. And my collaborator, Guru Devabrata Sinha, is sort of like the official royal musician of the temple. And his students who he trains and who have also been a part of my journey also are very much going, and as I said, they either perform for weddings, births, deaths, and from time to time when Guruji's asked that we will be doing a performance, they go and perform their style of drumming. And so when I came into their lives, and Satyaban was very, very open. He's one of the young gurus today who's open, and he had seen my work before that with the Thangta practitioners. So he was aware of my sincerity, my seriousness. So he said, okay, I'll be happy to share my students. And I've been creating works. And what is very interesting that, which he mentioned to me later, that from time to time, some gurus would come on a social visit, but it wasn't a social visit. It was primarily to see what I was creating, what I was teaching. And this year, it was quite a momentous time for both of us, that I've been working there for 16 years, and this was the first time this year on the 8th of January that I was given the platform to showcase the creativity which I had done and I had been doing. In the previous years, I was never given a platform for whatever reasons. And so lots of gurus came, not only from the Pungchalam, but from other practitioners of, singing, of the Manipuri Lairoba dancing, and everybody was just taken aback, and I was more pleased for them because it was lovely to see these young men who had traveled with me extensively in India and overseas, that their parents had come from faraway villages to witness this occasion. And the fact that we got a very positive response, so that was also very, very heartening, not only for me, but more so for them, because of the fact that people would always be curious to say, like, and the fact that though they are drummers, I have taken the drums away in my choreography. So that was another challenge for them, to sort of start learning the music which I used, because basically before I came, all they did was drum, and they would, do their bhajans and occasional Bollywood songs and music that they are used to seeing. But beyond that, for them to listen to music of various composers that I have used in my work was also a learning process for them also, and for me, how to teach them to respond, because again, the music was all blur, and then I had to break them up into counts, and then also give them cues. So that's where I said, you've reached that point, and when you hear that, it's time for you to move on. So that way synchronization also came into the picture, which is very, very important.
Taking off from when he's talking about techniques, so I was fascinated by your pictures because they're really unusual. I know that conceptually they seem to me to have this sort of essence of anicca, which is the transition, transience in Buddhist practice, that everything is in a state of flux, that nothing is absolutely stationary ever, that there's no stability, and that there's constant movement, there is decay, and there is life and regeneration. So you've managed to get that sense of movement in the photographs of the monks and other groups of people. But can you talk a little bit about the essence of the philosophy as well as the technique that you use, because it is rather unusual?
Well, yes. I think like we can start from the impermanence, not that every constant moment and minutes, everything is constant changing. Okay? The vision of human power is really about the energetic way is the another reality which we are totally connected and is completely surround us, but somehow we just see and we live on this reality. In the last reality, everything has become energy. Okay. With human power is the way, is the halfway to show this energy and the connection about all our soul in a way. Okay. The technique is something like I been explored for like 2-3 years before to understand exactly how was working exactly the camera, because I explain you, like the conventional photography is based on 3 elements, which there are the ISO, the time, and the aperture. Okay, human power at this photography, they are made with 3 different elements, which there are like out from like the conventional photography, and they are based on the movement of the body, on the movement of the camera, and the movement of the light, because the light and the body and the camera, they design. All of 3 they design, and the result and the connection between all of these 3, they create like a shape, which is like in my imaginary, it comes in a reality just with one photograph. There is not a retouch.
It's not retouched at all. No, it's just what you've shot at that moment.
Exactly.
With the light and the camera movement, the movement of the subject,
Of the body.
and the subject movement, the body, and the light at that particular point of time. So the shutter that you use, the shutter is at a slower speed, obviously, but then maybe it varies according to the light. The shutter speed.
The shutter speed is completely separated. You shoot in a bulb.
Yeah.
So with your finger, you decide when.
Oh, you're shooting at bulb.
Close.
So
it's always a mystery. Depends on the light. Because,
Yes.
you know, in some condition, like the photograph could be like 1/20. You know.
Yes.
But other condition maybe could go for 3-4 seconds.
Yes.
So it depends on like your own sensitivity, you know. And then, of course, now with digital, we can see directly the image, so there is a way to understand. But before you have the vision, and then you create vision, and you materialize in this. And the beginning, it was very interesting because I was trying my best.
Yeah. So I think there must have been a lot of experimentation in the beginning. Yeah.
A lot of experimenting, and like many people and friends, they were saying like, Paolo, what you doing? This is like completely out of focus. But then I see through one error, because this is like is one error basically. Shooting the picture in this way is a big error, you know? But very interesting. So I try to make the error and to enlarge the error, and the error becomes like the reality. So inside of this error, I kind of see my own technique.
Yeah.
So, which I think is...
So the error, right?
Yes, one error.
You made a mistake. Yeah, and it's like that with the Lumiere brothers when they began their filmmaking. You know, suddenly the film stopped, and then they discovered that it was the film moved backwards, and then they discovered, you know, fast motion, slow motion, and all of those strange things. So with a lot of mistakes, great things happen. Yeah. That's yeah. So then you made it into a style, and then it formed part of your philosophy. And there seems to be a move away from your commercial work into this work. So this is the work that you do.
For me, this is not a work. It's just my heart.
Art,
and it's my way of like living, and it's the way to capture the different part of the world.
Yes.
And it's something I'm never gonna stop. As a standard dancing and performance, like something you should like keep doing and looking day by day. to try to find maybe this movement or something. It's always like my eyes, this kind of movement or connection. Sometimes I have a camera, sometimes
not.
you know.
Yeah. Astad, to ask you, we're talking a little bit about moving into the spiritual realm of things. I've noticed that in your earlier work, at that early time, it was very sort of, making a comment on social issues and very sort of aggressive and strong, punchy kind of work. And then gradually now you've been doing the Tagore and you've got the whole element of the spirituality in, you're doing these wonderful Sufi worlds. So there has evidently been a shift in your work. And I noticed that that's what you've even used in your Manipuri dancing. So can you talk a little bit about the spiritual element entering into the work that you do and how it connects up with the philanthropic work that you're doing?
Well, when I started off my career in India, and first 10 years was a very, very difficult period of time where I was constantly being shunned, and so there was a lot of aggression, frustration, and that the only way of a release was through my work. So there were works which sort of showed frustration, even showed anger, anger to the public, anger to the powers be. But slowly acceptance came, but still the frustration was there of not having enough platforms within the city, within the country, to showcase the work. It's very sad in India that when an artist, whether it's an Indian classical or any artist, especially in the world of dance, when we put in months and months of effort and we come and we're given one evening. Generally in the other parts of the world, you would get at least 4 evenings at a stretch, which sort of is a good run. But here we do one, and that's the end of the time and effort you've put into creating that work, and then subsequently you've got to make sure that it is showcased. So to cut a long story short, yes, as time went on, my work was accepted by even the gurus, because for a long time the gurus of the Indian classical dance world were skeptical. They did not sort of dismiss me, but at the same time, yes, I recall one guru who was still around, and he says, "ये क्या करता है? एक हाथ यहाँ और एक पैर यहाँ, इसको dance कहते हैं?" And it was ironic that some years later a documentary was being done on him, and I was the juxtaposition of my chakras, which I had sort of learned from Kathak, but then I evolved into sort of spinning and sort of being like and I really discovered this. I happened to be in a discotheque in Mexico City, and it was Donna Summer's number, and so there I started turning and turning and turning. And I said, okay, so that was sort of the initial sort of seed of create. It's like sometimes you discover movements at a very sort of times where you don't even think. So. As time has gone, one has now accepted in a way that, okay, things are not really moving or changing, but that shouldn't mean that I should still be angry, because you accept that you're not able to change it, but still I'm contributing. So there was a sort of, as a creative person through the decades, if I see, there has been a change in my approach, in my choreography, and the spirituality has always been there. It's just that when I started working with the Pungchalam drummers, and the fact that these are drummers from the temple, so probably that was another way of looking and approaching my work in my creativity. Now, my work with the deaf and the street children, again, sort of the journey has been, for over 2 decades. And there again, it all fell in by accident. When I wanted to have dancers come to work with me and collaborate with me, some of the dancers were keen, but they were not very sure because they would still be reprimanded by their gurus. So during one of my visits to Calcutta, I knew of a lady by the name of Zareen Chaudhary who had a deaf theatre company. And I said, Zareen, why don't I come and just give a workshop for your kids? And at that point, I had no idea that it would become quite a major part of my life of working with them. So for 2 years, we sort of did a workshop, and then those short workshops did leave an impact on the young actors. And the young actors asked Zareen that, why can't he come and work with us for a longer period of time? So the next year, I was able to give 3 weeks. And after the 3 weeks, again, I felt that these young, talented kids needed to be showcased. There was a talent, and I knew that, okay, by then I had a certain name, there would be sponsorship. So I took it upon myself to use myself as a catalyst to showcase these young performers. And that's how the journey has been. And there is talent around, not only with them, but even with the street children. And I feel that somebody needs to tap it.
Yeah. I'm going to try to sort of screen that little deaf children, but I'll just do it after I ask one last question, because I have 5 minutes. So I'll finish with Paolo and then come back to you, because, of course, the most interesting thing is, how do you teach the deaf? Paolo, I wanted to ask you, how did you move towards this? I mean, how did you get to the Dalai Lama? What change overcame you? Because it's so varied. I mean, you're working for Vogue, and it's fashion, and it's such a different world. How did you move from that to being with the Dalai Lama and doing the kind of work you're doing? Because it's a big shift.
Well, that's a long story. It's coming from one person I met, which was the mother of my ex-girlfriend. And basically she was a part in the 70s. She was a part of the hippies in India, Italian.
In India?
Group. Yeah, they were around, no? So those people, they met the monk. And in all those groups, it was like 2 lama, very, very, very important. Now, actually, one is still alive, and one of the 2 passed away, unfortunately, in 94. One it was Lama Yeshe, and the other one is called Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Okay? Through those group of people, something big and very, very important for Buddhism happened in the world, because one of the family of those people, it was very well family from Tuscany. He donated one castle in Tuscany to those lama. Okay, so the lama, they start to come to Italy and give teachings on Buddhism.
So this was the first time that the lamas were coming, Buddhist lamas were coming to Europe.
It was the first teachings of Buddhism done ever in Europe. It was like something very, very, very important, which now it changed a lot, because now also in Italy we have a lot of Buddhists and and okay, so let's say that one day I walked through this castle, and I was supposed to meet somebody like in some remote area into the place, but I didn't know the place, so I was not loose, but I was just walking around to see. And this lama, Geshe Jampagazzo, he just woke out from this little house where he was living, and he looked at me, and he was the main lama there, the one he was teaching. And me, I say hi, he said, and then something happened, I don't know. I found myself with him, like giving the hands, and he started to ask me questions. So this contact has been so amazing, and something very new, because I see him that he was asking me question, but in the same time it was kind of feeling my state of mind or whatever, no? And he started to recite some mantra, something like that. So after 3-4 minutes, I turned the face and I saw that like all the people I was looking for, they were all there standing and looking us, no? And after they told me that it was very strange that Lama was giving attention in this way, you know. And I don't know what happened. Like I was feeling, I start to feel like different. I start to feel like, I don't know, some new condition, no? And I turn the face and I run to the parking and I start to cry, and I've been crying for like over 50 minutes, something like that, you know. It was a kind of liberatory way, you know. So. Yeah,
and then you met the Dalai Lama, and then since then you've been working and shooting the Dalai Lama as well.
Yes, that was really the beginning. And why I started to buy a book and start to study Buddhism and stuff like that.
Right.
And then what happened? I started to come to India to follow the teaching of His Holiness.
Yes.
And one time after the other one, it was always more and more and more amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah. And then, of course, with my camera, I start to get close and close and close. And then I met all the Tibetan security and everything, so they kind of see me as a nice person. No? It's not like I'm just taking my photograph. And finally, I met His Holiness, and I started to take some portrait and picture. And 2 years ago, His Holiness he came to Italy because he's been invited from Lama Tsongkhapa Institute from Italy, and we organized like one exhibition on him.
Oh, lovely!
And I show like all my pictures,
your pictures,
like portrait and whatever I did in those years, and that was a very good time because like you know, and then people start to talk about photography and everything.
That's right.
Yeah. So
that's right.
Now, these years I will attend again like 2-3 teachings, and next year in January it will be something very important, which is called Kala Chakra, and it will happen in Bodh Gaya, which you are from India, so you know what is the place, and His Holiness is going to give like the 34th Kala Chakra in his own entire life, which is very powerful initiation and very blessing.
That's nice.
I suggest you to come.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah. Astad, I wanted to get back to the deaf, but before that I just wanted to say, in continuation of this, when I saw what you did with Tagore, there was such a strong element of the poem, the reaching out to, you know, a larger universe, nature. It was really very beautiful. It's a comment, it's not a question. I really loved it. Could you just tell us how difficult, or, well, it must have been difficult, but you obviously evolved a technique, because when we saw the performance with the deaf, it was terrific, and you would never suspect that the people who were dancing could not hear. So they don't know the rhythms. How was that managed?
Well, when I started working with them, and again, I was not really trained, I had these young people, and I devised a counting rhythm, and the important thing was that all of these young people who were participating, they all had to learn to count the rhythm at the same time. So it's a very basic counts of 8, but it's basically the counting they learn is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. So these count 8 are repeated. So the initial training for them, as I said, because that is very important, and then that way they become synchronized. Now I've worked with different groups of deaf people, not only in India but also mainly in Washington, D.C. at Gallaudet University, which is the world's largest university of the deaf. Now, this particular group was my second group. My first group, which was a group of Calcutta, the Action Players, and they were with me for 14 years. And in the span of 14 years, I had two different lots of deaf performers who came through the creativity. These were girls from the Clark School for the Deaf in Chennai. Now, these girls were already trained in Bharatanatyam before I came into their lives. So for them and for me, they had a dance vocabulary. So compared to the first group, which are actors, and movement had to be introduced. So this was a different kind of challenge, because this was the first group which I choreographed a full 60-minute performance, which is called Contraposition, and it was based on the Navrasas. And here again, I had received a grant which allowed me the luxury of commissioning Amit Heri, a composer and a guitarist based in Bangalore. And I sat with him when he composed the music. So whenever he composed, I could automatically say, okay, I'm going to be able to break this particular music in counts of 4s or 7s or 9s or even up to 16. And this I could do primarily because I knew that these young ladies had this vocabulary of dance movement, so they had the tala. So I could sort of also push their limits to sort of creating the choreography. And with this group we did, when the show opened way back in 2005, and we went immediately to open the Deaf Olympics in Melbourne, and subsequently we did performances internationally, nationally. And the last performance before we closed, because what happens is that I mentored these groups for about 7 or 8 years, and there comes a time where I feel now it's time to move on to another group. Also circumstances do not allow, because these young girls were also passing out of school and they were moving on. So we did the last performance at the invitation of President Abdul Kalam at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. And what was very, very endearing for them also, that after the performance, the President had a reception, and he insisted on serving each of the young performers individually. So that was also very, very uplifting for the girls. Some of the parents had accompanied the young girls to perform. And as we speak, I've just started a new group, the Kotawala School for the Deaf in Bangalore. And the target is 2017, when I will present a full-fledged work, because the school will also then celebrate 50 years. So I've just begun.
That's nice. I wish you all the best for that, Astad. And for you, you just told us the good news that these photographs are going to be shown as one of the satellite projects of the Venice Biennale. So I wish them all the best for their wonderful work that they're doing, because so many other people benefit from the great artwork that both of them are doing, one in dance and one through movement and photography. Any questions? Yeah.
Good evening. My question is to Astad sir. Actually, we could not see the clip, but I saw that many people are putting hearing aids while performing. So, can they hear music once they put it, or?
No. In this particular group, there was only 2 people who had sort of 10% of hearing. The rest of them were profound. One of the main difficulties in India, which is really sad, that even the present school that I work with, and what is very, very essential in any school, at least I've been trying to sort of impress, there should be a wooden floor. Because working on a wooden floor, they're able to pick up vibration, not of necessary, but like some people said, oh, do they dance just by vibration? I said, no. But this vibration does help me, like, when I am teaching and when I want to stop, I really have to go and try to get their attention and make the sign. Now, if I have a wooden floor, which I had the luxury in Calcutta at the Loreto College where I was teaching, was a wooden floor. So when you stamp on it, they can feel it and you get their attention. So though not all of them had hearing aids, but some do have hearing aids. And even in the present group just now that I have, there's one cochlear implant of my kids in Bangalore, but most of them are still like profoundly deaf. And what is very interesting, I just, after having worked with 3 months, and the school principal wanted to come up and see what had been training them. And I said, yeah, please come. And some teachers came and they said, can we bring our final year students because they're going to pass out? And we just demonstrated what I had been teaching. And the principal commented that, we've had many teachers come and teach dance or try to teach, but this is the first time I've seen our group so synchronized. So that is very, very important, as I always also lay stress upon them. I said, when you're going to be on stage, I want you all to dance as dancers and no mistakes, because I don't want the audience to say, oh, because they have that disability that they made a mistake. I said, there's no room for mistake. And that sort of really, they also strive for it. And the fact that the response they get also makes them feel good, and they also try.
But you showed us that 1, 2, 3, 4 till 8. So that means they have to see you when they are doing.
No, they have to learn to count. All have to count.
But they have to read your lips.
In the beginning. But once when I'm teaching, I will teach. I said this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in the class when the workshop is being done. And then I said, now they know that and they remember that. One thing is they have a good, because sometimes in the class I teach something and I go away and I've forgotten. And they said, we did this. Can we repeat it? So they have a good sort of memory retaining. So once they have seen me and I've taught them, then I don't have to be there. And like the performance begins, they're on their own.
On the stage also? There's no one from there?
No. That's what was also very, very sort of fascinating, because we had performed in the World Deaf Festival in Washington, and there was a group of China which was doing wonderful things, but their teacher was in front giving them instructions, and somebody said your group was 100 times better, that once the music went on, they were on their own.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Vivek here. Again, a question to Astad actually. You would, as a dancer, know that dance is about self-expression, it's about flowing, and it's about, you in the moment. When you're actually working with people who cannot hear a rhythm or music, to what extent are they also getting into a form of self-expression? How much do they get into the flow? Or is it more for them some kind of, certain actions that they have to do in touch with, more their mentally, they have to be more alert to the 1, 2, 3, 4, rather than getting into a flow of self-expression?
Well, in the beginning, it takes time, but as we kept on performing, they got into the flow. And at one point of the performance, the music stops and they dance. Sure. And for the audiences, that's when they realize that these young girls are dancing to rhythm. So they have been able to imbibe that feeling of flowing, of expressing, and that's, then you really sort of say, wow. I mean, yes, these are, because again, each section of the rasas were not on just 8. Some were on 8, some were on 4, some were on 7, some were up to 16, they would go. And basically, then it became a flow, and then you saw them getting better and better.
And so do you also see some of them actually taking it on individually and moving more into dance on their own? Or
unfortunately, in our country, there's no scope. My first group of actors, and some of them still do sort of share their time with the community in teaching mime and movement. Two of my first lot of actors were brilliant as mime, and after having been with me for such a long time, They were trying to see if they could do something on their own. Fine, they could do something on their own, but who was going to sort of finance them? Who was going to market them? There was nobody there, you know. So, and unfortunately also I was expressing within the community, which really came about especially in Calcutta, there were kids from the economically deprived, and there were, you know, a lot of rich Marwari kids. And I was taking them to America for a month-long summer exchange at the university, and I asked everybody to do fundraising. And I asked 6 of these rich Marwaris, I said, I would like you to give me 25,000 rupees more. So that would help me in sort of taking these others. You know what they turned around and said? Ab garib bachcho ke liye chanda ikhatta kare to hamare bachcho ke liye kyun nahi? You know? So that was sort of like, you know, there are many incidents, or even in the second group when I did of the Clark School. There again, the kids were getting very, very recognized, and one day the principal says, and each of my students get paid, you know, whatever I'm able through the foundation to give, that also gives them dignity, you know, and I'd made sure that each one bank accounts are open, so I didn't want to give it to the school. And so one day the principal says, I think you should also pay the school. You know, I said, for what? You know, I think you're making money. I said, is that so? I said, no, the trustees. I said, call the trustees and let's. And then the trustees, no, we've never said that. I said, you have no idea what it takes to fundraise for a group of 16. And unfortunately, again, you know, much as the people say that, okay, you have a name and all, but even when you go to the corporates today, you know, even under the corporate social responsibility which has come about, dance is not looked upon as something, as a subject. And I also try to impress them. I said, you come and have a look. I'm just starting a new group. And you'll see the transformation. It's not just dance. It's a whole evolution of an individual, how they grow, how they interact, how they respond. You know, all these things are part of education. So, no, unfortunately, once I'm out of their lives, they really, even in this group, I had a wonderful young dancer who had a lot of talent, and I tried to help, but unfortunately, then she got married and she had to move on.
So you get me a villa in Tuscany, even I will teach Vipassana over there. That's a fabulous story. Thank you. I am not an artist. I am in awe of your art. All of you. It's fabulous. What confused me a little, this art for social change. What is this change you are trying to accomplish, all of you? And how do you know you get there? Is there a way of saying, okay, now I am progressing, now I have arrived, I am getting there? And doesn't it conflict with anicca? I've taken Vipassana. Anicca is you let go. You don't hang on to change. So is there a conundrum there? So 2 questions essentially. One, what is the change you folks are trying to accomplish, and how do you know you're getting there? And second, you started with anicca. It seems to go against that.
Okay. So, social change, because I think that in the Alice project, the educational methods, which is like the methods they using to teach meditation in the school. They teach meditation on kids, they having from 5 till 10 years old. What happened like in the mind, in the brain of those kids is unbelievable. They get like in a creativity, they develop like the non-violence and the compassion mind. Many nice results. You can achieve many nice results. So I think if here or like whatever, like we try to put in a more public way this way to be in human power, which is connecting art and it could be like something very important to show this opportunity we have to teach meditation in school. I think that meditation in school at this age, it can make a social change. Social change also because it's producing art, finalized on helping like less fortunate than us. And I think both they working for like social change. Okay?
Well, my sort of theory of working, or my sort of really identifying, developing, mentoring, so that you see from where they have come and where they have now grown and achieved the level of performance. And they in turn now share it, like my young performers who came from the Salam Balak Trust today are working as dance teachers. They go to schools. Within the sort of Salam Balak, they've started training younger students who are interested in dance. So the idea is to give them a tool, which I have given. They've reached a certain level of achievement, and constantly they are in touch, and whenever I'm there, I do go sometimes and see the class that they are teaching. So that's basically is sort of what I have been able to do in all these years. And similarly, even with the drummers that I work with, the foundation now has sort of located young drummers between the age of 9 and 14. And we're trying to sort of, they are learning the craft, but at the same time I'm now trying to see if I can showcase them on certain platforms. And it was also very interesting, I was talking to one of their parents who was a woodcutter, and I said, why have you put both your sons in learning? And he says, you know, with this I know that they will be able to make a living. Woodcutting, you know, if they were to, I mean, I can barely make ends meet. And with this, they will also have a craft, have a talent, and they'll be also serving the Lord. You know, so that was sort of, I mean, my philosophy is not that I'm going to be changed, whatever I can, because I've always been an underdog in my own journey as a dancer, as a creator. So I feel that if I can use my talent to spot talent or to see people who are really interested, I'm sort of sharing, teaching, and that's my way of contributing and helping.
You all both have done good works outside Mumbai. Suppose you want to do the work within Mumbai, how to direct that power and bring about a change in the Beti Chawl slums of Mumbai. This is only for elite people, means for rich, but what for the poor people in the slums, and how to recognize that power and how to direct that power. Thank you.
Well, it's nice to talk about these methods, and the goal, or like the dream, it could be the one, if you imagine, like, if this educational method it could be used in every school of India, for example, because you are absolutely ready on it. It's maybe more difficult in Italy because of religious stuff, politics stuff is getting, but in India, for example, every school tomorrow they're using these methods. In 10, 15 years, all India will be very different, you know, because all the kids, they're growing up in a better way, with a better mind, with a, you know, so that's what.
So one boy learns that one boy can teach 10 boys, one boy learns that one boy can teach 10 boys, and one girl learns she can teach 15 girls. Like that, there'll be a network, like a viral and spiral going on. Whole India can change. The Britishers destroyed India by taking away dance, drama, theatre and music. So we bring that back and stop memorizing. We can be a creative society.
Of course.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely, yes.
We're still blaming the British. We're still blaming the British after 65 years. Nah, I can't take it. You're there on the Alice school part, that I understand. When Pratham does that Asar report on education, They're showing we have quantity, not quality, but they actually measure.
Yes.
If you measure and then you form the foundation to go to scale, then the CSR efforts will find you. And the same thing for Astad. If you figure out somehow to go to scale and you started to talk about the benefits, you give them a means of living, you give them, you didn't use the word, but more self-identity. If somehow you can get that and document that, then this 2% CSR money will come to you. I just want to tell you to both, you got to start measuring somehow.
I was wondering, what does India have in infrastructure-wise for an international performing arts center? I mean, I know there's one NCPA, but what about something in the suburbs and next to your college, you know, where young people can actually get seduced by serious performing arts and not just mere entertainment?
Yes, I think it's very important. You're right, there should be many more institutions of art, and certainly we need to spread art much more beyond the walls of the NCPA. There's no doubt about that. And I think art itself is a wonderful way in which, you know, humans can be transformed. Art itself is wonderful. It gives so much self-confidence. It makes you feel good and, you know, pleased about yourself, and I think that's important. Thank you so much. Thank you all of you. And thank our wonderful artists for the wonderful work that they're doing. It's really been a pleasure to talk to both of you.
Thank you so much, Paolo, Astad, and Jeroo, for that engaging discussion. Thank you, Binu and Devashri, and the Good Earth team. And thank all of you for being here tonight.